Good morning. Good morning. How the devil are you doing this fine day? Hope you're all fit and well. My name is on the screen again, which I most definitely do not need. I think enough people know me by now. Thank you for that, Chris. Morning. I've got a brass monkey looking for a brazier this morning. Yeah, I'm not surprised. It is very, very, very cold out there. Jim Turner says, morning all. Good morning, Jim. Mark Whiting is in the house. I think Mark was he was actually off the mark even before the show had started this morning. So good morning to all of you. It is very, very cold out there. And I can tell you how cold it is. One of my dogs went out into the garden this morning, had a look around for about 3 seconds, walked back in, got back in bed, wanted no part of it. It is very, very cold out there. So if you are one of those that is working out in the weather, look after yourselves. Gary Muirhead's here. He says, good morning, Mark. Good morning, guys. A couple of days in the house because of the weather, so I'll be working from my virtual construction site. I stole the idea from Peter. Yeah, for anyone that wasn't here yesterday, we were talking about a conversation that was going on over in our WhatsApp group, and our friend Peter McKenna, who's been in and out of hospital, well, basically since we've known him, I think, but he's been in and out of hospital fairly regularly recently with a chest infection, and he went to the hospital and was sent home to a virtual ward. A virtual ward, which is basically another way of saying go home. Jim Turner says, lovely crisp morning. Yesterday was very crisp. This morning feels a bit kind of damp and cold and not pleasant. Ken Hatter is here, and it looks like he's got exactly the same thing down in Wales. Good morning to you, Ken. Good of you to join us. Thank you very much indeed for sparing us the time. I will press all the relative buttons in just a moment. Loads to get through today. I won't bore you with it right now. I'll tell you about it when we get there. So shall I do the usual thing? I think I probably should. I'm going to roll the intro, post the question of the day, and get this show on the road, starting with this. Yeah, it's already the Thursday, the 9th of January. Thursday, the 9th. Year's almost over. Thursday, the 9th of January, 2025. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition. In today's show, this is Caterpillar. I mean, not this, but I'll show you that in just a moment. The JCB 370X goes to work, and we're going to show you a crane like no other. Really haven't seen anything quite like it. It's got a fantastic name, and I've got to tell you, the soundtrack that I've chosen for it, yeah, that if you're not awake yet, you certainly will be. Plus, in my morning monologue today, how construction's arteries are being clogged with bureaucratic cholesterol. You'll see what I did there when we get there. Let's have a look. Gary Muirhead says, I was told to go out and defrost my wife's car for her because I'm just that sort of guy, and it was -8 on the dashboard. Yeah, back under the blankets, that would be me. Before we get to all of the stuff that I've just mentioned, we do have the small matter of today's mystery machine. So far this month, we've only had 3 shows prior to this one. Gary Muirhead got the first mystery machine of the year. I got the second one, and Steve Williamson got the third one. So who's going to reemerge victorious today? We'll find out in just a moment, as soon as I've shown it to you, immediately after this. And just as part of our weather update service, apparently it is it was -8 up in Bonnie, Scotland, where Gary Muirhead is. -4, almost tropical, where Ken Hatter is in Wales. Yes, -4, chilly. Right, okay, mystery machine. We're going vintage today, and it looks like that. Not a current machine. So if you are of the older generation, no names, no pack crew, Chris Ford. If you are of the older persuasion, you may just be able to identify that. That's what you've got to work with. While you're trying to figure that out, I will very quickly remind you of our question of the day, and then we'll get on with the news. that's the wrong one. Don't know what's happened there. Okay, so today's question of the day, which I'll rectify in just a moment. Today's question of the day is, who is your favourite actor or actress? In years gone by, I might have said Al Pacino, Gene Hackman, something like that. These days, probably going for Tom Hanks and Gary Oldman. A big fan of Gary Oldman. In terms of actresses, hard to see past Meryl Streep, to be honest. There are others that are easy on the eyes, but when it comes to acting talent, I think Meryl Streep takes some beating. What about you? Who is your favourite actor or actress? And I don't think I'll bother rectifying that. It's on the screen now. You'll know what it is. Who is your favourite actor or actress? Let us know in the chat. We'll be back to that in just a moment. There is our mystery machine. Chris Ford reckons it could be a Cat 631C. It's not. Jim Turner reckons it could be a Cat 621. I tell you what, it's not a Cat 621 or a 631. It's not a cat at all. There you are. There's a little bit more for you to be going on with, because it is time for me to we'll play the news. I'll tell you about it afterwards, but I'll play you the news now, and we'll have a chat after this. Construction clients are failing to engage with the new building safety regime, according to research carried out by the Building Engineering Services Association. The association used its regional meetings with members as focus groups over a 6-month period to gauge take-up of measures introduced under the Building Safety Act, which came into force in 2022. The main finding was a total lack of engagement from clients, with the association members reporting that not a single client had discussed compliance with them. They asserted that far from seeing evidence of any significant culture change, the pressure to deliver projects faster and more cheaply was increasing at the expense of quality and safety. Members from all UK regions confirmed that project decisions remain primarily driven by cost and speed, particularly by owners and developers whose buildings were not classified as higher risk. And on a similar subject, student accommodation developer Unite has today warned that the Building Safety Act will slow development pipelines by around 6 months. Unite Chief Executive Joe Lister said the business has now factored in another 6 months on its various project timelines to take into account the new approval gateways required by the Act. Our development programs reflect the expected impact of the Building Safety Act, which will add around 6 months to delivery timelines for new student accommodation due to new approval gateways. As with any new regulation, this presents risks to delay due to capacity constraints at the building safety regulator, he warned. Now, lots of things to tell you about. So first of all, my morning monologue today, I actually wrote it 2 days after Christmas, maybe 3 days after Christmas, and it's been sat here on my desk. I was planning to give it an outing at some point, but it's been sat on my desk. And then I had the news today about this Building Safety Act, which is, quite clearly another piece of legislation that, by all accounts, we could quite easily have done without. That's going to be the subject of the morning monologue this afternoon. A bit later in the show. Obviously, Building Safety Act, just one of a number of hoops that we have to jump through this morning. So stick around. I'd like to bring you that. Mystery Machine, what have we got here? Mystery Machine, we've got, we've already done those. We've got the Euclid R100. Funnily enough, I was actually looking for a Euclid photograph this morning. Couldn't find a suitable one. So I went with this instead. Gary reckons it could be an O&K R50. It is not one of those. Chris Ford reckons it could be an Evelyn Barford RD50. It's not, but you're not a million miles away. And Gary Muirhead reckons a Terex 3307. It's not one of those. Let me take Gary off the screen and show you that. I'll take that away now. Going back to this, so two things. Ken, thank you for that. Obviously, we are looking to ever expand and improve the show. So I appreciate you saying that. That's a good thing. I like the fact that you like the news. One thing I did notice, we do the recap where we take the after show chat, bung it through AI, and it spits out a podcast at the end. Well, up until Christmas, we were getting dozens, hundreds of views of that and listens and watches and everything else. The one the day before yesterday, nothing. No, nobody listened to it or watched it at all. So I'm going to stick with the news because obviously Ken Hatcher likes it. But if anybody thinks the recap is a waste of bloody time and effort, let me know. Let me know because I don't want to waste. I don't want to waste my time, and I certainly don't want to waste your time. You give up enough of it as it is. Mick has just arrived. Morning, Mick. Thank you very much indeed for being here. Mystery Machine. Let me go back to that. Chris Ford is going for the RD45. It's not one of those, or even an RD30. The name of it is a little bit longer than that. I mean, you've certainly got the right manufacturer, but you've got the wrong model. Is basically all I can tell you about that. Yeah, we're going to be cracking on with all things Caterpillar in just a moment, just as soon as I can find the right button to press, which is this.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
Yeah, I received a notification that Caterpillar had dropped a new video, and it's called This is Caterpillar. I don't know why Caterpillar, the biggest construction equipment manufacturer in the world, needs to tell us who they are. I think we're all pretty much aware, but the video is pretty damn good, so take a look.
Everyone wants a new, different, better world. This is where it happens, where big iron and not so big iron give rise to big dreams of healthier lives, deeper connections, and greater opportunities, where virtual reality becomes real roads, real power, and real solutions that keep us all moving forward. This is 3 decades of autonomy in action, built on a century of breakthrough after breakthrough. A digital focus in a down-in-the-dirt world, bringing together connected assets, e-commerce, and data analytics to deliver technology solutions with face-to-face, lifelong relationships. This is where hardworking products get a new lease on life, and lives change for the better in communities around the world. Where we plug in, charge up, and help power a better tomorrow, while never losing focus on the products and services that fuel progress today. This is where our pride in what we make is surpassed only by our pride in what we make possible, helping our customers build a better, more sustainable world. This is Caterpillar.
Yeah, so many fingers and so many pies. I need to. Well, we're going back to the recap. So first of all, on the good side, Jim Turner says, "I listened to it. Thank you, Jim." On the other side, which clearly goes to show that I'm not shouting loud enough about it, Ken Hatcher says, "What's recap?" So for the uninitiated, and you're in the WhatsApp group, Ken, you should probably know this, but anyway. The after-show chat portion, i.e. the bit where you all have your say, I take all of that and I bung it into an AI every single day. And the AI goes through, analyzes the discussion, picks out the highlights, and produces it as a podcast. We've been doing it for a couple of months now. So long as we chat for long enough after the show. Every single episode has a recap. If you go to buymeacoffee.com/demolition news, you'll find all of them there. So if you are in the cab of your machine today, you've got the windows and the door closed, you've got your heating cranked up, and you've got your Bluetooth on, you could sit there and listen to the recap of dozens of shows from the comfort of your cab. Just nice and easy, that one. Let me take that away. I'm going to say good morning to Rizzo Construzione. I don't know where they are. That sounds very, very Italian to me. And they've also said ciao. Ciao tutti. That's all I've got, I'm afraid. But bellissimo to have you here. Good morning to Rizzo Construzione. Let's have a look. That's the bit I don't watch. Well, see, Ken, that's a good way for you to catch up. Rather than having to listen to me babbling on, you can listen to a couple of AI voices talking about all the bits, what were discussed. Now, Mystery Machine. Mystery Machine looks like that. We've got Gary Muirhead going for the Evelyn Barford AEC 690. It's not. Chris Ford going for the Centaur dump truck. Maybe, but it's got a number. Well, it's got some letters and a number, actually. So, yes, and Caterpillar, this is Caterpillar, Ken Hatcher. Ken's enjoying the show today. He liked the news and he liked the video from Caterpillar as well. Let me show you a smidge more of the Evelyn Barford machine. Just looking for a model now, if anybody's got any clues on that. Gary Muirhead says, when are you planning your first 2025 After Dark show? It's a good question. One thing I will tell you is we've recorded... We've recorded a video interview with a couple of guys in the demolition business. The video, I did it just before Christmas. It took me a long while to edit it because it was quite a long one. But I'm planning to premiere that on Wednesday next week, 7 o'clock Wednesday next week. Won't be a live show. I'm just going to hit the button and you can watch along if you so desire. But the first After Dark show, we've actually got the feelers out. I'm speaking to 4 different people at the moment about who's going to do the first one. It will be coming, and you'll be the first to know as soon as I do. Question of the day, going back to actors and actresses, I used to like Makepeace, as in Dempsey and Makepeace. I remember her. I thought I had her name then, but it's gone. Can't remember. Gary Muirhead is going for the Venture RD50. It's not. The Centaur 035. It's not. It's not the Centaur RD50 either. No, it's... I'll tell you now, what I'm looking for is 2 letters, 3 numbers. I've noticed the AI has changed in its habits since you started it. It used to narrate the balanced conversation at fast, but now it gets stuck on a message and preaches it straight. I'll have a word. I do have the ability to guide it. One of the things that I was finding, I mean, the AI actually analyzes the show, but then I go through and analyze the analysis. And one of the things that I was finding was it would get very, very hung up on certain bits to the point where sometimes the episode, rather than being 8, 9, 10 minutes long, was 20 minutes long because it made a point and then went back and made the point in completely, all over again. I will go and have a look and give it a tweak today, see if I can do that. The one thing I did notice yesterday, though, it did revert. I kind of felt like it had lost the ability to identify the people that were actually speaking on the after show part, but it actually identified Jim as an example yesterday. So it's not perfect. I'll tell you that much. It's not perfect. I can tell you we do have a winner on the Mystery Machine. Before we get to that, Dempsey and Makepeace was indeed Glynis Barber, or Glennis Barber. She was definitely a Glennis or a Glynis. But I'll tell you, Mystery Machine, Gary Muirhead, for the second time this month, has come up with the right answer. I've got a pen here somewhere, which means, let's have a look. Let me put a G. Yeah, there we are. Let me take that away. Congratulations, Gary. My apologies. I should have said that before. But Gary's come back and said, has Demi been retired? Probably, yeah. The AI that I was using, I used 10, 12 different AIs. The one that I was using to create Demolition was, in fact, to start with, I was paying about $15 a month. But the 15 became 30, became 40, and I was basically using it about once every 6 weeks. So I've binned it. We may be revisiting it because, it's a fast-moving thing, but I'm, as it stands at the moment, I'm not planning to revisit that. I think we've got better ways of doing it. I mean, much the same as our construction news part. If it comes down to pre-reading it and then recording it, maybe I'll do it myself. Maybe that's the way to do it. Sorry, Chris Ford, you came up with a manufacturer? Yeah, absolutely. Dan Cullen, a bit late, lost track of time. Surely you have an alarm set. I don't know. Just to very quickly reveal, I said that Gary had got the right answer. That is, in fact, an Evelyn Barford RD 255. That is exactly what that is. I'm sure I've mentioned before, I actually did some work. Should I tell you it'll be a very quick story. I've been doing the PR for Evelyn Barford for about 2 years at this point. This is during the days when it was located up in Grantham in Lincolnshire. Very oldie worldy factory. and he'd been bought out by a guy called Duncan Wordsworth, very wealthy, but quite an obtuse kind of character. Anyway, they were planning to launch both a compactor and I think it may have been the RD50, like a revised version of the RD50. And we were planning to host a press event for it. So I'd gone up to meet up with the managing director, and we were sat in the boardroom, and I was telling them how it would all play out and what we were going to do with it. And Duncan Wordsworth walked in. And he had a chat with the MD, had a chat with a few other people, and he looked at me and went, "Who the fuck are you?" "I'm your PR man. Have been for about 2 years." And he walked out. That was it. Didn't have much of a conversation with him after that. But where is he now? I don't even know if he's still with us. My apologies if he's not. Dan was my guess by what I've seen. Okay, Dan, we believe you. Right, back to the show. Enough of my rambling stories. Back to the show. We'll be back in just a moment with what have we got next? I think we've got a bit of JCB actually after this. Yeah, I think we're all very familiar now with the JCB 370X. We were one of the first to bring you details of the machine because we were there at the press launch, and we've also been following it ever since. But it's now out in the wild. I know there's a couple working up in Scotland, which I'm desperately trying to arrange to go and see because it will give me an opportunity to go and buy a bit of lunch for Mr. Muirhead. But while I'm doing that, as I say, there's a few out in the wild, including this one.
My name's Lyndon Temple. I'm the director of Lord Construction Group. We're solely focused in the construction industry, providing a good service of aggregates and plant hire, operated plant, that kind of thing. So we've had the 370X, mainly loading the feedstock through the crushers and screeners. We've had approximately 500 to 1,000 tonne a day being moved by the machine. I'd say it's been doing a cracking job. First impressions, I'd say the machine is like a breath of fresh air, really. A nice sort of new boy on the block, head and shoulders above the competition, really, I'd say, in terms of the appearance. Driving it feels very smooth, very sleek. And the size of it is just right for our application. It's big enough to undertake all the tasks that we've thrown at it. In terms of tear out, absolutely brilliant. It's had plenty of power. When you're out reaching over the hoppers of the machines or loading lorries, for example, it's been really well placed on the ground. This machine, we've only been filling up every 2 days, so yeah, really impressed on that. The cab, I'd say, is a really comfortable place to be throughout the day for sure. I like the amount of adjustability you can have in terms of moving the controls, moving the seat around. Where everything is placed in the cab in terms of the buttons or the controls, very self-explanatory for a new driver, making training very easy. I could see it being difficult to get out of the cab, to be honest. It's a very nice place to be, very nice machine to operate. It's got plenty of agility to it, really wants to get on and go, get the work done, so to speak. From an operator's point of view, I'd say absolute no-brainer. It's just got that kind of quality about it, 100%, cracking machine.
Yeah, look, good to see a few satisfied customers. Dan Cullen says there's a few 370Xs in Gloucester. Walters, yeah, I had heard about Walters. I don't know if I got a press release on that. Looks an amazing piece of kit. Love the height from underbody to tracks. Yep, very smart indeed. As I say, I mean, I've had a very, very, very quick spin in it. Did Chris Ford get to drive that? Somebody here did, I think. I can't remember. Was it Chris? Maybe somebody else. I can't remember. Just wish JCB would come out with the next series, Rubber Duck. So do I. I kind of feel like it's overdue now. And the Ram circumference compared to Komatsu 360, larger, more heavy duty. I like it, says Dan Cullen. Yeah, there's a lot of homework gone into the JCB 370X, and I know you can say the same for any manufacturer, but it did look like they'd really gone away and had a long, hard think about it. So yeah, what do we got here? It was Chris got the yellow injection. Yes, can't go more than a few months without a yellow injection, I always say. And we've got something a bit different for you as our last film of the day, which I'll show you in just a moment.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
Now, I've got a couple of things to tell you about the video I'm about to play you. First and foremost, you know that expression, necessity is the mother of invention? So, a need arises and people go away and come up with a solution for it. Well, this is a prime example of that. I won't give too much away, but what I will tell you is the product you're about to see is called the Koala Lifter. Koala as in the koala bear. It's named that, but primarily because it climbs like a koala, but it's also from an Australian company. So with those two things in mind, I went away, searched the interwebs to come up with a suitable soundtrack, and I found somebody that had produced some music that was labelled didgeridoo techno. I needed no more prompting, so that's exactly what I've done. I've gone away and got myself some didgeridoo techno. This is the Koala Lifter. Let's have a chat about it afterwards. It's a shame that's over. I was quite enjoying the music, as was Dan Collins, who says, tune. Jim Turner says, this is bang on my kind of music. Mick says, love a bit of techno. Yeah, there was a video going on as well. Dan says, amazing piece of equipment, seen it before. Will it make landfall in the UK? I don't know. I think it's one of those things. You kind of need the passage of time. I know we've had wind turbines for a while now. What is the life expectancy of an average wind turbine? About 20, 25 years, something like that. So maybe we will start to seeing that. Jim Turner says, very 90s prodigy with an Aboriginal twist. Yes. Abo Techno is what I'm calling that. This wind farm project I'm working on just now, the blade span is 120 meters, and the company we're doing it for is Fred Olsen, the cruise line people. But didn't know they were in the wind turbine business. One of the things that struck me about that video, which is one of the reasons I wanted to play it, was obviously a very clever piece of equipment, and I realise that the size and the shape of a wind turbine lends itself to this. But they refer to that as kind of a friction grip. So they clutch onto the side and they gradually climb the way up, and then basically the body or the shaft, shall we say? Please nobody cut that out and have me saying shaft, but the main part, the main body, let's say, of the wind turbine then acts as the crane, and the koala lifter is just the hook. And imagine that in a construction perspective, but also in a demolition perspective. Imagine that if you could get that thing to cling onto the side of a building, going up and taking off things like cladding, and anything external, where you're actually using the building itself as the body of the crane. Listen, I thought it was very, very smart anyway. Not sure the health and safety mob will be a fan, but a decent idea if you've got the ghoulies to go up in it. Well, that's the thing. It's entirely remote control. You don't need to be up in it. You don't need. I think that's pretty damn smart, and as far as I can see, pretty damn safe too. Chris Ford says, can't help associating Rolf Harris with a didgeridoo, or was that a dodgy do? It was definitely a dodgy do. I found that one really hard to take. When you look back at Jimmy Savile, you think, why did it take so long? But you look at Rolf Harris, he was the nation's uncle for a while, wasn't he? Can you tell what it is yet? And stuff like that, and his wobble board. Let's not dwell on his wobble board. Mick says, what happens if it gets stuck? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Dan Cullen says, did you see on the news this morning, old man on the A417 had highways buying his house for 750 grand? Is this the one where they've basically built a road and then had to build him a tunnel to get to his house? I saw something about that. I must admit I was in a bit of a rush this morning. Going back to Fred Olsen and their wind turbines, Gary Muirhead says each base takes 600 cubic meters of concrete. That's not going anywhere anytime soon. They retracted the buy and now got to spend £6 million to build a tunnel for him to access his house. There's a little bit of me that admires his stubbornness. Cheaper than the tunnel. Yeah, absolutely. Right, that's pretty much the main part of this morning show. I am going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like over into my morning monologue. If you can't stick around, and I would urge you to do so, but if you can't stick around, do please stay safe. Look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues, and I hope to see you again very soon. But if you do have the time and the inclination, I will be back immediately after this little graphic that we have. It is more than 15 years since the publication of the Wolstenholme report into construction performance here in the UK. Andrew Wolstenholme analysed the British construction industry's performance against the objectives set out in the 1998 Egan report, and his assessment was pessimistic, noting a failure to meet targets in almost all areas, bar profitability. Wolstenholme outlines several problems prevalent in the industry and the measures that might be taken to resolve them. But 15 years on, and it feels like his recommendations fell on deaf ears. Productivity in the UK construction sector continues to slow against that of other comparable nations and other comparable industry sectors. Now, it's easy to lay the blame for this continued slide in productivity at the feet of successive governments and their will they, won't they approach to construction and infrastructure planning and investment. We might also point the finger of blame at those that have allowed the sector's skill shortage to fester and metastasize without treatment or remedy. But in truth, construction and by association demolition is its own worst enemy. It's been the architect of its own downfall. Even as productivity was sliding, the industry has placed sticking plasters upon sticking plasters while never actually addressing the underlying wounds. In many ways, the construction sector is like those people that start each new year by installing the very latest productivity apps on their phones, and who then spend so much time filling them out that they don't actually have any time to get any real work done. Similarly, the construction industry has become so distracted by systems, from planning through pre-tendering, risk assessments and method statements, overly complex training matrices and protracted sign-off processes, the industry has allowed productivity to be supplanted by procedure. All those processes, procedures, regulations have been allowed to clog the sector's productivity arteries. All those processes, procedures, and regulations have been allowed to clog the sector's productivity arteries in precisely the same way that cholesterol clogs the arteries of human beings. And like the heart of a person suffering with high cholesterol, the industry must now work harder and harder to maintain that vital flow. Failure to address the underlying cause of cholesterol in the human body can result in a total breakdown in the form of a heart attack or a stroke. Failure to address the draining procedural cholesterol within construction could prove equally catastrophic. In both humans and industry, the solution is stark and it's clear. Blockages in the arteries can't be fixed with sticking plasters. What's required is a fundamental lifestyle change. For individuals, that might mean diet, exercise, a rethinking of habits. For construction, it demands something equally transformative. It means re-examining priorities, stripping away the unnecessary, and focusing on what truly matters. It means challenging the culture that equates complexity with progress, that values procedure over productivity. It means asking difficult questions and being prepared to hear some very, very, very difficult answers. What might that fundamental lifestyle change look like? It could begin with leadership, not just at the top, but throughout the industry. Leaders who are willing to challenge the status quo, to prioritize long-term gains over short-term fixes, to inspire rather than dictate. It could also involve a reimagining of education and training, building not just skills, but pride and ambition. It might mean embracing technology, not as a crutch, but as a catalyst, using it to empower rather than encumber. Somewhere along the way, the demolition and construction industry lost its way. It's allowed the call for productivity to be drowned out by the deafening noise of procedure. To move forward, the industry needs to reconnect with that core identity, to remember why it builds and for whom, to take a few steps back to find out where it went wrong. Like a person abandoning multiple complex productivity apps on their phone and returning to a paper diary and a ballpoint pen. That journey won't be easy. Lifestyle changes never are. They demand effort, commitment, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. But the alternative, a continued decline, a heart attack waiting to happen, it's unthinkable. And now is the perfect opportunity to make that switch. Andrew Wolstenholme's report was subtitled "Never Waste a Good Crisis," and it called for the UK construction industry to use the 2008 recession as a turning point. 15 years later, post-Brexit and post-COVID, we find ourselves back in the economic doldrums. We failed to make the necessary changes last time, and it cost us dearly. Failure to do so again could prove fatal. So there you are. Now, I will reiterate what I said earlier. I think I actually wrote that on about the 28th of December. I wrote every day of my festive break apart from Christmas Day. I've got a pile of these all lined up because I was feeling particularly inspired. And I was literally planning to do that one anyway. And then lo and behold, our news today, we've got one company is saying that this Building Safety Act, which has been running since 2022, is pushing back their procedures or their projects by 6 months. And then you've got the building engineering, somebody or other, is basically saying that clients are not taking any notice of the Building Safety Act anyway. They're still entirely focused on cost and speed. So that's where that all came from. Let's have a look. What have we got? Going back to our guy that needs what was offered the opportunity to move, send the mafia around and make him an offer he can't refuse. Yes, see how stubborn he feels when he wakes up with a horse's head in his bed. More disgusting where Labour blocked the national inquiry into the grooming gangs. Yeah, I mean, setting aside everything, I'm not. Believe me, I'm going to tread very carefully with this. I am not for one moment condoning the actions of the Labour Party, obviously led by Keir Starmer, and I know he has a track record on this. I'm not for one moment condoning it. There's a bit of me that understands that making a big song and dance about it, which is exactly what should happen, further increases racial division in the country. I fully understand the reluctance to go down that path. But bearing in mind, we are now, nearly 6 months into the Labour government. They've had nothing but bad news, bad news, bad news, bad news, poor decisions, poor representation. They really are. They've hit the ground and fallen flat on their face. Surely this one was the time for them to say something that would have garnered them some decent PR. We are going to stand up against this scourge. Instead of which, they bottled it. And of all the things I've heard of politically recently, I think that one will likely come back and haunt them, and rightly so as well. Jim Turner says, I know of a farmer that got an extremely good price for his land when the A38 cut it in half and he demanded a bridge. The bridge would have been very expensive. The land was slightly cheaper. Nice. Wonder what the embedded carbon is on a wind farm turbine. Yeah, I wonder. I mean, that being said, the one thing I would say about that is we do now have these gigafactories, don't we? I know one of the issues with wind turbines was that they tended to be sort of shipped around the world. So not only have you had the cost of manufacture, the financial and the environmental cost of manufacture, but you've then also got to haul them around the world. Not so much now. I think that a lot of countries actually have their own local supply. I think that's one of the things that's being built up at Teesworks, isn't it? A gigafactory. Without sounding like a broken record, but have you managed to pin down Dr. Terry and come up with an interview on the state of the demolition construction just now and what the future holds? Now, on the 28th of February, I am going to be up at the Institute of Demolition Engineers in Leeds. There will not be a show that day, but among the people that I'm planning to see is Mr. Cornby. Now, every time we've done a Dr. Demolition or a Terry Cornby's surgery, as we used to call it, I've always done it at a distance. I will be in the same room as Mr. Cornby with a camera and a tripod and a set of microphones. So watch this space. I realise that's more than a month away, but watch this space. Chris Ford says, got a treadmill test tomorrow. See if I've got heart disease. My stepfather has been in hospital for the last 3 months with heart failure. Sometimes getting old ain't nice. No, absolutely. Absolutely. In the nicest possible way, I'm seeing it firsthand now. Both of my in-laws are, my mother-in-law has got MS and my father-in-law is on dialysis. Yeah, and they're both in their 80s, which, their 80s sounds like a long way off, but come the end of February, it'll only be 20 years' time for me. It doesn't look like an inviting place to be, old age, I'm afraid. Jim Turner, all industries need to know what they're doing. This comes from learning from those that they already know. And management and government don't do that anymore, so it's all fucked. Allow me to stick with my in-laws, and I'll try to circle back to all things construction related. If anybody has been on long-term medication, like my in-laws and like my parents before them, you'll know how this works, right? And I haven't got to this point yet. I mean, I'm on probably half a dozen tablets a day for blood pressure and diabetes and stuff like that, but I've not got to this point. But one of the things that I've seen up close is here's a tablet to help thin your blood. Okay, right. Okay, I'll take the tablet. I'm getting headaches. Yeah, that's probably a side effect of that. So take this tablet to get rid of your headache. All right, okay, I'll take that one as well. I'm starting to get a really bad cough. Oh, yeah, that'll be a side effect of the tablet you're taking to get rid of the headache. Okay, and it just builds up and builds up and builds up. Bringing that full circle. I don't know what the hell that's doing on the screen. Bringing that full circle, when you look at the regulations governing construction and demolition, here's a piece of legislation that doesn't quite do the job and has had a knock-on effect over here. So we'll add another piece of legislation, which has now impacted this thing over here. So we'll add another piece of legislation. And then that's obviously negated that piece over there. So we'll put and you end up, I mean, when you look at the sheer number, even when you focus just purely on health and safety related matters, you look at the number of hoops the construction and demolition companies now to jump through. I reckon the safest job in a construction company or in a demolition company, it's not the MD, it's not the digger driver, it's not the lady that makes the tea in the morning, it's the legal department. Because without them now, companies do not operate. They cannot operate. You think about, everything that stems from the Health and Safety Act and RIDDOR and lifting requirements and just one set of regulations over another, all of which slows everything. And going back to that news piece today, you've got a company that builds student accommodation. That's a company called Unite. That's their specialism. My guess is, looking at some of the stuff that they've done, a lot of it is very modular. So they have a very good idea. Once they've got a flat piece of ground to work on, to build 200 student rooms will take us 3 weeks, 6 weeks, I don't know. But they've got it down to a fine art. And then with somebody comes along and says, Building Safety Act, that's the next thing, pushing them back 6 months. Now, it's bad enough pushing them back 6 months. And, I'm sure they've now factored that in. So when they're actually speaking to a potential client or where they've got a piece of ground where they can actually build on, they have now factored that in. But what about the switchover? What about the point where they said, you want 5,000 student rooms for the, Leicester University? Not a problem at all. That will take us a year. Actually, 18 months. Because somebody has moved the goalpost from a regulatory point of view. And when you look at, I do feel like the UK is very, very much in reverse gear, and not just because of the Labour government. I don't think they've helped the situation, but I do feel like we're in reverse gear. When you look at the state of our roads, the state of our railways, the cost of our energy, the cost of our fuel, all of those things. And when you look at the productivity within the UK, not just UK construction, but productivity as a whole, it is very, 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 very poor in comparison to other similar nations. Even, we all like to point and laugh at the French. They're more productive than us in pretty much every aspect. And they managed to factor in scarfing down snails and a glass of wine at lunchtime. We are falling behind. And I do genuinely believe, and that's where the whole analogy came from. We have clogged the industry's arteries with regulatory cholesterol. And I'm going to oversimplify things here, but it used to be a case. You imagine. I don't know. Have I ever been to any of your houses? I haven't. And you've never been to mine, so that's fair. Imagine you own a plot of land. Jim Turner, I'm looking at you. You own a plot of land and you think, what would be good for this would be a couple of houses. And back in the day, and you may have to go back a little way, but back in the day, you would have been able to say, okay, I'm going to build a couple of houses. You might have done it yourself, or you might have got contractors in to do the work for you. But you would have gone to your local authority and said, I'm going to build a couple of houses. I'll fill in the planning application. Yeah, that looks okay. Crack on. Now, if you did that, a planning application would take forever and would likely be refused for one reason or another. If you actually managed to overcome that hurdle, you would then face a whole bunch of other regulatory and legislative hurdles to overcome. And not only that, if you chose to do the job yourself, you would have to go away and get yourself a qualification in order to tick the box on the local authority form. Alternatively, you would have to employ a contractor who would also have to go away and achieve a certain level of non-legal, not illegal, but non-legal. It's not a legal requirement. They would have to achieve a certain qualification before they could build your house for you. That's one of the reasons we have too few houses. That's one of the reasons why we have such piss poor productivity in the UK construction sector. And it has a knock-on effect, particularly when you think of, well, let me do this in 2 bites. It has a knock-on effect because if you've got to go through all those regulations, that begins often with the demolition. So the demolition will be delayed. The start of the work will be delayed. Demolition will be delayed because of all the regulations they have to go through. You then have the construction itself delayed because of all the regulations they have to go through. So there's a domino effect right the way through the industry. That's what it does. And then when you think the other side of that is, if you are a bank, a supermarket, a warehouse operator, an Amazon or something like this, you found yourself a plot of land. We need a new facility here, a new bank or a new supermarket or a new warehouse. We need it here because that will improve our local service. That could be 2, 3, 4, 5 years away. You've identified that need now, but you can't do anything about it for 2, 3, 4, 5 years because of all these obstacles. And again, there you are. I mean, I find it really hard to argue with that. I don't think the job is in reverse gear, or the nation's in reverse gear. It's on a suicide mission. It feels like that. It really does feel like that. And so much of this is so obvious. I mean, even things as simple or seemingly simple as pothole repairs. You know, we have dedicated machines. It's not a perfect solution, but it is at least a fix. But we've got dedicated machines like the Pothole Pro from JCB that can sort out a pothole in next to no time. We've also got technological apps where you can go along. It's GPS driven. I could go out. My house, my road has been resurfaced recently, so we don't have this problem. But you could go out with your app. You take a photograph of a pothole in the road. It will be GPS linked. You send that to the app, and the app sends that to your local authority, and it's added to a list of things that need to be fixed. So you've got the ways of identifying it. You've got the means to fix it, but this bit in the middle is a bugger's muddle. You know, you've got local authorities that don't have the manpower or the budget to do it. You have a lack of will at government level. It is a complete and utter nonsense. I remember building a McDonald's restaurant years ago. Thank you for that, Gary. I don't need it often, but I'm grateful when I do. It's 28 days from starting on site till the first burger coming off the line. Wow. Wow. We got it at slab level and the restaurant came flat packed on a truck. 28 days from start to first burger. Yeah, listen. Do McDonald's make the best burgers in the world? No, they don't. Best burgers in the world are always outside football grounds. That's a known fact, surely. But how? I mean, I've eaten McDonald's burgers here in the States, right across Europe. I had a McDonald's cheeseburger in Tokyo. I was drunk at the time and fancied one, and they are all exactly the same. If there is a company that has got things down to a fine art, it's surely McDonald's. The council wouldn't even entertain the idea of natural growth of the village at a sensible rate, but if a big developer came along with a plan for 300 houses, they'd probably listen. So the whole system is fucked, as natural growth in anything is always better than forced growth. Yeah. It doesn't matter whether I've mentioned this or not, but I was approached many moons ago. I was made the head of our local residents association. Basically, somebody asked for volunteers, and everybody apart from me took a big step backwards. So I was made Residents Association chairman for a couple of years. As a result of that, I ended up spending quite a lot of time at my local town hall. As a result of spending my time at the local town hall, I was approached. Would you consider being a Tory councillor? They said. Not on your Nelly, was my response. But I wouldn't say I considered it, but I did go through the motions to find out what exactly how the whole system worked and the challenges and everything else. So that's what I did. And one of the things that I raised with them, the reason I was head of a residents association, they built, it was literally, going back to Jim's point here, he said 300 houses. Bizarrely, where I lived, it was 300 houses. Taylor Woodrow and somebody else had built 300 homes. And we'd all moved in there. But we'd all moved in there. We had roads that weren't finished or weren't adopted. We didn't have any refuse collection for months. Really struggled with telephone lines and Wi-Fi and broadband and that kind of thing. But the biggest thing was we moved in. We had no doctor's surgery. We had no school. The local authority couldn't find us. I definitely told you this story before. We had a guy who was one of the landscapers. Had a heart attack while he was laying turf in one of the gardens. And we phoned for an ambulance, and the ambulance couldn't find us. But the day after I moved in, which was weeks prior to this, I phoned for a takeaway pizza. Pizza Hut found us no trouble at all. The point I'm making is, what is the point I'm making? It all relates back to this. Yeah, going back to my point about the town hall. I said, you've You've plopped us into the middle of this place. We're not quite in Epsom, we're not quite in Chessington, we're kind of between the two. We don't have a doctor, we don't have a hospital, we don't have this, that, and the other. And they said, well, we're very disappointed to hear that, because for the last 5 years, we have been instigating community creation methods. 5 years before, it was a field. There was nobody there. What are community creation methods? And surely a community creation method should include a doctor or a pub or something. Nothing at all. Goes back to Jim's point there. If you're adding a house, 2 houses, 20 houses over the course of a year, the local area will kind of assimilate. You'll take that on board. Maybe the local surgery might employ another doctor, maybe only a part-timer, maybe you're sharing with another surgeon or a surgery or whatever. Maybe the school might need an additional classroom, but you plop 300 in there in one fell swoop. Chaos ensues. There's a pothole machine that does the whole job automatically through GPS acknowledgement. It's based on a lorry-type setup. Yes, there is. There is. But it needs the funding of the local authority and the will. That was one of the things that well, apart from the idea of being identified as a Tory, one of the things that put me off was I attended a meeting once and I was just flabbergasted by the negativity is the wrong word, but just the refusal to accept anything that might upset the apple cart. And I actually said, I'm not sure I could cope with this. How does this all work? And the guy that had approached me to become potentially a Tory councillor said, you could come up with an idea that would improve the town noticeably, would make everybody in the town's life better, would save money, would be better for the environment. It ticks all the boxes. But if one of the people sat in this room now said, no, I don't fancy it, that's it. That's it. That's game over. At which point, my ambitions for Tory councillorship that I didn't have in the first place, that was it. I was out. I visited one job garage on while I was up there on holiday. Good. I'm planning to do the same. It's just taking forever. Just flick through the FT online. Sorry to say this, gents, but the look of it, we're in for a crash if going by what I've read. I mentioned it there. That Wolston Hole report 15 years ago, it was cool. It was subtitled Never Waste a Good Crisis, and it was written immediately after the 2008 recession, which obviously was very, very bad. We're there again. Bearing in mind we are post-Brexit, we're post-COVID. We've got a government in place that is... West Ham appointed a new head coach yesterday. I will be staggered if he makes any difference to our season. Much the same as Keir Starmer. The tail end of the Tory government, from Theresa May, Liz Truss, Rishi Sunak, was a shit show. Let's be absolutely honest, it was a complete shit show. You would hope, using football analogy, there is always that hope that you'll get a bounce. You appoint a new manager and all the players go, new manager, hey, here we go. Keir Starmer romped to victory, a pretty substantial lead in the polls, romped to victory, and the downward trend has continued. And there's nothing that I'm seeing, nothing whatsoever that I'm seeing that proves or that suggests that a turnaround is coming. Bear in mind, Rishi Sunak basically built his entire election campaign on stopping the small boats. He failed. His election bid failed. I think he'd pinned all his hopes on one thing that he was never going to achieve, probably had no intention of achieving, and as a result paid the price. Keir Starmer has based his entire government, his entire reputation upon building 1.5 million new homes in 5 years. Since he came into office, the number of houses and the number of planning approvals is shrinking. It's shrinking. Gary Muirhead says, a lot of these planning authorities don't want to pass these permissions because the infrastructure isn't up to it. The waste, fresh water supply, electric isn't up to our Victorian infrastructure. Yeah, absolutely right. That's one of the things that I was speaking to a friend of mine who's he's an engineer in construction. And I was saying, 1.5 million new homes in 5 years, pie in the sky. We don't have the people to build them. And the guy that I was talking to said, even if we had the people to build them, what are you going to do with all the sewage? Bearing in mind that we can't cope with the sewage we've got, which is why our rivers are slowly dying, because the water companies are basically pumping shit, literally, into our water courses. Our sewage system cannot cope today with today's level of housing and houses. If we add another 1.5 million new homes, where's it all going to go? Dan Carl says a crash is inevitable, Mick. Here, when we're going to sort out a day out, Mark, Mick, any Saturday or Sundays? Yeah, it'll have to be I could do a Saturday daytime. My only issue is that I tend to pick my father-in-law up from dialysis on a Saturday afternoon, but we can figure that out. I do want to get out and about, and I haven't forgotten, Dan. Your prizes are actually sat right by my desk. I know you won 2 back-to-back Mystery Machine months. You have prizes, including that. That's one of your prizes. We do need to meet up, either that or I'll put them in the post, but I do want to meet up. I do want to get around the country and do a bit of that. So, yes, we are working on that. Anywho, people, that should just about do us for today. That's an hour. If you've got any further thoughts, please let me know. I will be turning this into a recap. Ken Hatcher, this is aimed at you. I'm turning this into a recap. It's taking me about an hour and a half at the moment because I have other bits and pieces to do post-show as well. So an hour and a half time, watch WhatsApp, you'll get a notification. How is Ruth feeling now? I hope she's a lot better. Yeah, she's nagging me on a daily basis, so she's back fighting fit. I just hope she's not tuning in at the moment. No, she's fighting fit again. Took a while. I think she had the cough and all the stuff that went with it for about 6 weeks. And my youngest daughter, who still lives at home, had it for about 4 weeks. It went away. It's come back. I don't know what the hell they've got wrong with them. I don't know whether it's a long COVID or a flu that refuses to die. One of those things, whatever it is, it's hanging around. But as you can see, being the manliest of men, I am not impacted by it at all. I laugh in the face of disease. I've got a bit of a tickle. Everybody, go do your thing, would you? Oh, hang on a minute. Mick, for those of you who know the Isle of Dogs, Canary Wharf, the infrastructure is old and new developments are connected to the old systems. The cost of the total rebuild of the pipes is complete telephone numbers. I do find it ironic that we refer to Canary Wharf as old. Bearing in mind, I spent a large part of my formative years as a journalist reporting from Canary Wharf. I mean, obviously, look at me. I am clearly knocking on a bit, but I don't see Canary Wharf as old, and I realise it is. I mean, I was doing that. Jesus Christ, what was I doing that? 36 years ago, probably. Have a great day, guys, says Dan. Just bored, waiting for something to do. I'm sure it should happen soon enough, but that's the important thing. You're still being paid. Long may it continue. Everybody, go have a fantastic day. Back tomorrow for more of the same. It's the last day of the week, or the last show of the week next tomorrow. So try and end the week on a positive note, which would make a lovely change. Till then, everybody, have a good day. See you then. All the best.